We were out on the road somewhere in a Waffle House, and this young waitress came up and said, "What do you have, guys?" And I said, "Well, like a coffee with sugar and no cream." She said, "Well, we're out of cream. You'll have to have it with no sugar." People do stupid things, and say stupid things. It's all the time. And some of it's hilarious, and some of it's, kind of a dull, kind of evil. Notice that in my life. The people, when people do things that are wrong, their justification is usually has no logic and no sense, no common sense. They just do it. They just seem to do things that are wrong and to hurt other people because they're able to do it. They see the opportunity and just do it. It's really weird. I don't know. I think that evil is retarded. People who do those things are just not that smart, Then you've got the innocent kind of stupidity like that waitress, and I've never forgotten that line. And I tried not to laugh at her, but I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it. And she realized, she didn't realize. That's what made it funnier. She was like, "What's so funny?" I said, "Nothing. I'll take whatever you got." Even in those days, I was starting to see the sort of the demise of younger people being properly educated. It was starting to happen then. Today, it's horrendous. It's horrendous how little our kids are actually learning in school, and they're not learning logical thought or any kind of common sense or any of those things. They just learn instant gratification and everybody wins a trophy and goes home with a passing grade no matter what they fail in. And I think that's sad, and I think that there's no way you can. How do you know what winning is if you haven't lost? You know what I mean? Like that's the big thing, right? You have to experience loss to know how to act when you win. That's a pretty simple concept, and it's something that's not being pushed into the forefront these days. That's for sure. And even back then, it was happening then that the school system and stuff was starting to slag off a little bit, and just not do what it did when I was in school, in the 70s and the early 80s. It was a different world, It was at this point that I sort of things were going really well with everything. Me and Jerry and Stephanie, and things were just progressing to a point where I thought to myself, this is sort of the thing that I had in mind for Bob to experience. This is what I wanted to happen when we first went down there. Before Mother died. I mean, we lived real hard and real unpleasant, and I thought, this is something. This is how it was supposed to be, right? Like a good band out touring, doing cool stuff, riding in a bus. And Jerry was, 59 or 60 years old at the time, and he was, under a lot of stress driving the bus to this gig and that gig. And I thought, why not get Bob back down here? Because Bob is a professional truck driver. So it was like, I just didn't see how it could be any better, to have Bob come down and so I called up home, and I found Bob, and I said, look, things are going really good down here. We need a bus driver, and I'm sure that we can make this work, and Bob was like, well, okay, fine, I'll come down. Bob was always that way. Like I've said that in previous episodes. He came down there not because he was looking to make a pile of money or have some great, glamorous job. He come down there because he was worried about me. And he thought, I might as well go down. Now that Mother's gone, there's nobody really looking out for him. And so I'll go down and hang out. And that's what he did. He drove his old, I don't know what it was. I can't remember the make of the car. It wasn't the Impala. It was an old Chrysler car, an old land yacht. That's what Bob always drove. He used to find these great old cars and keep them running for years. And he was a great mechanic. So Bob arrived, and we just fell into the groove. Bob and Jerry just absolutely fell in love with Bob. Everybody always fell in love with Bob. That was just the thing. Bob's so quiet and smart and just kind of watching everybody, and he got a great sense of humor. And him and Jerry just hit it off so well, and he just became part of the band almost immediately. It was just an instant thing. So, long about that time, I decided things were moving along well enough that I decided I was going to propose to Stephanie. So I went out and got a ring. There was a catalyst, I think, for my decision to commit to Stephanie, besides the fact that, I was young and in love. There was one snowstorm in Alabama the entire 10 years that I was there. And on that night, Stephanie and I were at my house, at the taxidermy shop there. And we were in there fooling around, as, young kids. And Jerry comes to the door. So our clothes are all disheveled, and we're trying to get my shirt on straight and all this shit. And I get to the door, and it was obvious, probably by looking at us, that what we had been doing in there. And Jerry standing, and he knew, and I knew he knew, and Jerry was just looking at me, and I thought, I'm a fucking dead man. This guy's gonna kill me. Jerry used to get really quiet when he was angry, and his eyes would get narrow. And he looked at me and he said, now, John Paul, what y'all doing in here is wrong, and there's a big storm here, and you need to bring my daughter home right now. And I almost crapped. Jerry Sullivan could have easily just reached in the doorway and snapped me in two pieces. And I said, yes, sir. I'm sorry. I apologize. Yes, sir. I'm bringing her home right now. And so the thing that probably bothered me the worst, as he's walking down off the step, and going to his truck, I looked back at Stephanie, and she was absolutely terrified, like abject terror. in her face. And I thought, okay, I hope that the things that I've heard about Jerry's nature and these matters isn't true. And so I loaded her up in the Oldsmobile and we drove down to the house. And I went in with her. And when we went in the house, she just went over and sat on this little sofa in the kitchen that was sort of on one side of the counter that was facing the dining room. She sat in that little sofa and she just kind of curled up in a ball. And Jerry just looked at me. He never said a word to me. And he just looked at her, and he just was standing over her. And he looked at me and he said, "You need to go on home now, John Paul, right now, go on home." And I knew something bad was going to happen. So, but I didn't know what to do, because I was in the wrong. I was fooling around with his daughter. We weren't married, and she was young, I was young, and it just wasn't the proper thing to do down there, And so I walked out the door, but as I was walking out the door, he started screaming at her. And I never forget looking back and watching her diminish. She just shrunk down into the couch and started sobbing. And he was just standing over her, right over her, just screaming at her. What do you think you were doing? And just losing his mind. And I thought, Jesus Christ, what's going to happen? And I thought, I didn't know what to do. And so I left. And I never slept that night, because I didn't know what was going to happen to her. Because I had obviously, there was a lot of things about Jerry's behavior that were, in the past, that were pretty raw. And I thought, he's going to beat the crap out of her because of me. And but the next day, I went over and there was no marks on her. He hadn't hit her, but she was just worn out because he'd been at her all night and just berating her all night long until he finally let her go to bed. And I think that was the catalyst. It was like, okay, and that was my biggest, I just had this conversation with a very dear person, a young man who I won't name. And he asked me about rescuing people, specifically women. I think, and he was like, "What do you do? Is it possible to rescue somebody from horrible situations?" And I told him the truth. I said, sometimes it is, if it's not their fault. If they're doing things in their lives, that if they're making the choice to be, in that situation where they're, like if they're abusing drugs or alcohol or not using their head and doing stupid things, then it's difficult to rescue someone like that. But if someone's powerless and be in a situation, it's possible to rescue them. Maybe. It's hard to say, right? So I said the safest thing to do is to not get into that situation. Don't become involved with somebody that needs rescuing. And I think that goes for women as well. Women don't need to take on men that need to be molded in some way to be a suitable partner. You should find someone that's got their shit together, And but I think men especially are biologically hardwired to be the protector, that's in our genetics, right? To be the protector, the hunter-gatherer, the warrior, protector of the offspring and the cave where you live, and keep the fire stoked and all of this, build all the spears and arrowheads, and that's still in us. It's still in us to do that, and it's not a good idea. You can't really rescue anyone. It's a sad truth, but so after that episode, my rescuer gene went into high alert, and I thought the best way that I can fix this problem is to marry her and get her to the hell out of that house, because she can't live there anymore. And part of the situation kind of turned me against Jug. And I thought, this is not right that he should treat her like that, or any of his children like that. That's ridiculous. You don't torture somebody for 6 hours over an indiscretion, moral or not. So it wasn't too long after that I went and scrounged up enough money to buy a ring. I had it made, actually, and of course I asked her to marry me, and she said yes, but before that I had to go ask Jerry permission, and which was a terrifying process, because I thought he would say no. It's strange, all of the times that I considered marrying somebody, there was always somebody in the background going, are you sure you want to do this? And I think it might be a universal thing. I'm starting to think it might be universal, that, unions are good unions are so hard to come by that the people outside of them can see whether or not it's a good idea or not. You're always blinded by, your feelings for someone. And so this first time I went through this, Jerry did that to me. Jerry, instead of questioning my honor and whatnot when I went to ask for her hand, he instead went kind of off on Stephanie. Not in an ugly way. He just kind of said to me, he was like, well, John Paul, Stephanie's might not know exactly what she wants, and blah blah blah. And then he started to he made a bunch of generalizations about women, and they're this and they're that, and you got to work at this and work at that, and it was a really bizarre conversation. And at the end of this little advice session, which I kind of took with a grain of salt, because obviously he at certain times in his life felt that the way to straighten up a relationship was beat the shit out of everybody in the house. He said, yes, go ahead and ask her. So I did. And then Jerry, was a good man in a lot of ways, right? And as soon as we got that situated, he said, okay, well, I've got a big piece of land out behind this. He had a big parcel of land back in the woods there near his place, and he said, I'm going to give that to you all. You go ahead and clear that, and we'll put your mobile home in there, like a modular home, which were the rage back then, and they were nice too. There was some really those places were like castles compared to the old stuff from the 70s. This would be early 90s, and they were modular homes were really starting to catch on, especially down there, because it was so easy to put them up on a piece of land. So I literally went to work on this 3 or 4 acres of land, or 5 acres, I think it was, with an axe. An axe. We didn't have a chainsaw. I went in there with an axe and started cutting the trees down, and loved it. I loved the work. It was a lot of fun. And Stephanie was back there, hauling brush, and we were working back there almost every time we could get a chance to do it. And so that was all going on. Seemed to be going along tickety-boo. I was always working with Stephanie musically, too. She was a very talented person. And she was a really good piano player. And she was easy to teach. I had taught a lot of the solos that she played on the songs, in the band live. I had taught her. I had gone in. I wasn't really a piano player myself, but I understood how the instrument worked exactly. And so I designed licks, and said, okay, so here's the solo, and I'd build her a solo and teach it to her one little, a few measures at a time, and she'd have it, and she'd go up on stage and just kill it. And so they were really smoking hot solos, and so people loved her, even though it was, when we were in a bluegrass setting, there was always this underlying prejudice because there was a piano on the stage at a bluegrass festival. But we just ignored it and went on anyway and did our thing. But there was something about Stephanie. I don't think she was ever really, truly happy in that band. And it was because of her relationship with Jerry. She loved Jerry, but she also was afraid of him and resented him for the abuse that he doled out over the years. And she was of the age at the beginning of that era where she was just didn't want to really be there. She wanted to go out. She wanted to get out of that world of living off collection plates, and she watched all these other people and bands and around that area struggle and backbite and sabotage each other continually. And she was smarter than that. She was like she just, and I could tell, that something in my heart said that she wasn't going to be long for that crew. Like she was just not gonna, she just wasn't gonna stay in there. And so, sure enough, things went along, and we had done some really cool shows. We did a lot of Nashville things. We did the Heart to Heart show on TNN, which you can see on YouTube. We were super hot at that point. Man, it was such a good band. And we just did a lot of really good shows, really cool things. Marty was out on the No Hats tour with Travis Tritt. We were part of that. We had gone in to do... there was a record made called Red Hot and Country, I think it was called. It was for AIDS research. We were on that album with Marty, and we recorded. There was just a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff. And so it wasn't long before Stephanie decided that she was going to quit the band. Basically, she was just going to quit the band and go to college. So she decided. She decided to go to college in Mobile, which was 50 miles away, and study psychology. And I thought that was pretty damn cool, because I had done the same thing. When I was in college, I minored in psychology. And I loved it, and I thought, well, at least I can help her a little bit through the first year of it at least. And so away she went, and she lived in the dormitory down there. And problem was, I was about to get sort of blindsided by the whole, what was going on down there. I'm one of those guys that's early, at least at that time of my life, I was sort of the dopey guy who just never saw shit coming. I was like, and the next thing you know, the world explodes, and I'm like, oh, what just happened? And so that was exactly what was about to happen. So somewhere along the way, we had run into, because he was a gospel act, I'm pretty sure that's how we ran into him. We ran into William Lee Golden's brother. William Lee Golden, if you don't know who he is, was the bass singer for the Oak Ridge Boys. He had the guy with the long, or no, sorry, not the bass singer, the baritone singer. Had the long beard and the long hair, and so his brother, I don't remember his name now. He had a nickname like Grizzly or something. I don't know what the hell. I can't remember. But anyhow, he was a nice guy. And so we had run into him somehow, and I was getting to the point where I was, trying to go to Mobile every chance I had to see her, and which was difficult because I was out touring with Jerry, just really just the three of us now, just me and she was coming when she could, but I was having to take up a lot of slack because the band had turned into a trio, and so I was trying to go down there every time I could go. And one night I went down there to the dormitories and couldn't find her. And I called, and she wasn't there, and she was supposed to be there, but she wasn't there, and I lost track of her for a couple of days, maybe 3 days. I can't remember, but it was quite a while, and I was starting to get worried. And I wasn't saying anything to Jerry because I was afraid of Jerry. I didn't want Jerry to be mad at her if something weird was going on, so I didn't say anything to anybody. And so when I finally found her, she had left for the weekend with Grizz, or whatever the hell his name was, gone to some kind of a big house party at his place, east of Mobile, and stayed overnight and I don't know what happened. I didn't really ask, actually. I just kind of didn't want to go there. So, and when I confronted her, I just said, what the hell? What's going on? And her basic response was, I just wanted to do something on my own, away from all of this, and away from, I just wanted to do something that wasn't what I've been forced to do my whole life, which is the things I've already described, with the band and Jerry and all the bullshit. And so I was angry and I was hurt, and I really didn't believe that anything untoward had happened. I didn't see that, because I didn't think she was really that kind of person. So that kind of slid by, and then somewhere along the way, she ran out of money to go to college. Jerry was trying to help her, but Jerry couldn't help himself, so she eventually just ran out of money. She had got a small scholarship, and that ran out, and so she ended up back in Waggerville, and wasn't happy about it. And we're still out on the road and stuff, and there was a really, this is how strange things get, right? And this is a classic example of, why didn't I say this at the time? Those things? I actually love those. I like to go back. I like to think about things like that and consider all the shit I should have said, right? You're always, hindsight's 20/20. There's no question about it. So Stephanie had her own car, but it never ran. It was a beautiful Camaro, cream-colored. I think they were called an Z-Rock or T-bar roof. All like it was a hot rod. This thing, gorgeous car. And me and Bob got it running. Meanwhile, let's talk about Bob for just a second. Bob was Bob was down there working for Jerry. The engine blew out of the bus, and so Bob removed the entire engine and rebuilt the whole engine. Like that, this is a monumental job, trying to rebuild a diesel engine, and he did it, and he did it for no money. Jerry kept telling Bob he was going to pay him, going to pay him, going to pay him. I don't think Bob made $50 for the whole job. It was just these were the building blocks. All of these little things of the destruction of the band, right? It's funny how these things happen. But Bob was not a vindictive or angry person. He mentioned to me, and I did to him. Like, Jesus, I can't believe the amount of work you're doing, and you're not getting paid for it. Like, what the hell? Like, this would cost him $3,000 if he took the engine to a shop, and yet you're doing it for nothing. So, yeah. So anyhow, back to the Camaro. We got the Camaro running. So Stephanie was very happy. So I was like, let's go for a drive. So I jump in the driver's seat, and we pull out of Jerry's. We go down the, half a mile or so to the gas station. And I had no money, which was the norm. So I put $2 worth of gas in the car, which was a lot of gas back then, because gas was only about 60 cents a gallon. So I put $2 of gas in the car just so we weren't going anywhere. We just wanted to see if it ran okay, right? Fine. Okay, good. Did that. A couple of days later, I get this note from Stephanie. And the note basically says all of the things that I was assuming in my head was that she was tired of the band, tired of her life, and apparently kind of tired of me, because she said in this letter, I can't live on $2 worth of gas. And how she was embarrassed because I only put $2 worth of gas in the car. So, needless to say, there was a large disagreement, but the note never really came up. I just went in and talked to her at length and got the relationship salvaged the best I could. But for years, I wish I had... See, I couldn't do this because I was still working for Jerry. But what I should have said to her, if I had been smart, things might have been way different. I should have said to her, I put $2 worth of gas in the car because I'm working for your fucking father. That's why I have no money. So you're blaming me for being broke, but it's your own father that's keeping me broke. I don't have any money because I'm working for your family. And I wish I had said that. I really do, because I think it would have altered a lot of things. I don't think it probably wouldn't have salvaged the relationship or the band, but I think it was something that needed to be said that was never said in any of those circles. That people just kept a certain level of denial all the time because they were preening and posturing for other people to see them, the other people in the musical community. You had appearances to keep up. Oh, we worked with Marty Stewart and we did this and that. And meanwhile, we're living off ears of corn out of Jerry's garden. There's no money for anything. Like, we just have enough money to put enough diesel in the bus to start the bus and hopefully get it up the road, and then Marty's going to bankroll us and get us to the gig. And Marty was bankrolling the recordings and bankrolling, God knows how much money Marty put into Jerry. Like, if it wasn't for Marty Stewart, there wouldn't have been a Jerry and Tammy Sullivan. because he was getting help from all corners. And so it should have been said. It isn't just a matter of sour grapes now or anything like that. I should have said it. I should have said it. It should have been put out. It would have got back to Jerry, and maybe things would have been different. Maybe everybody would have went, okay, wait a minute. Let's take a breath here and see if there's a way where we can actually make a living at this rather than limp along like we've been doing, because the band is so good and the potential is so high. Why are we not really trying to turn this into a business? And so I didn't say those things, but I went and salvaged the relationship the best I could. And so it wasn't too long after that Stephanie was still, not happy. And I couldn't blame her. So she was tired of being broke, so she went and got a job as a waitress at a restaurant in Jackson. And I noticed after a while, I was going down there to pick her up and drop her off and whatnot, and I noticed after a while that there was a guy hanging around there. And he was a big, goofy-looking bastard with cross eyes, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? And I could see that she was flirting with him, and he seemed to be around a lot, and I thought, okay, well, this is not good. So one day I went down to Jackson to do something. I can't remember what. And I pulled into a business, and I went into business, and I did my thing. I can't remember what it was, and I was in there for quite a while, and I came out. I never locked my car. Nobody ever locked anything down there. I didn't even lock your door. And so I came out to the car, got in the car. My engagement ring and a note is sitting on the dashboard. And the note just says, you need to give this to somebody who wants it. And I was like, oh, lovely, great, okay, good. So there was the beginning of, just absolutely horrendous, horrible, terrible heartbreak, like just horrible. And as it would be, it was a really sucky thing to happen. Like, I did the very best I could in the situation, and it just didn't work. So I didn't know it then, but I was facing another year, of working in that band with her. She was going to be on the bus with us. And it was a rough thing, but I always was, people have accused me of being a sucker for punishment, but the bottom line is that I had made a commitment to Jerry, and the music ultimately was more important than anything else. So I just put my goddamn head down and went to work, and that's how it went on for another year. But it's strange, throughout my career, I've written songs that either were historical in nature that turned out to be 100% accurate, and I didn't know it at the time I wrote it, or I would write songs about things and it would come true. Life would imitate art. And I guess that's just a thing that happens. It seems to happen a ton. Life imitates art and vice versa. And so it's a universal thing. It's not something that just happened to me. It just happens for some reason, unknown to me. And potentially because I think we might just be subconsciously aware of things that we're not ready to admit. And I wrote a song long before all of this happened and sang it for Stephanie, and I remember her listening to it and going, wow, that's a beautiful song. Who's it about? And I didn't want to tell her because I, in my head at that moment, knew it was about her, and just didn't. I just never spoke it aloud. But it wasn't long, just a few months later, that all of it went down pretty well, just like the song. Well, not pretty well, exactly. Funny how that happens. It's hard to say if your pen is a crystal ball or you're just writing down shit that you know is true and you don't want to accept it. Against my better judgment and the words of all my friends, I threw caution to the wind and gave my heart away again. But the winter wind spoke softly as it whispered through the trees, saying she would only break your heart, your love will never be. But springtime brought the answers to all my hopes and cares, and as it laid the winter wind to rest, her love was shining there. And I somehow had forgotten the words he'd said to me. There's no way a love so perfect could be anything but free. Pain, said the wild wind, is all she'll leave behind, and in the end you'll be the lonely one. Beneath the summer sun she'll make you think her love is strong, but when January comes she'll be gone. Our love burned brighter yet than the summer sun on high, and as the autumn leaves turned orange, she was always by my side. She said, I will never leave you, just you wait and see. Forever isn't long enough to keep you here with me. But December brought the snow again and all the bitter cold, and I saw the flame was dying in her heart I'd never hold. She tries hard to deny it, but I see it in her eyes. Last night she said I love you, but it sounded like goodbye. Pain, said the wild wind, is all she'll leave behind, and in the end you'll be the lonely one. Beneath the summer sun she'll make you think her love is strong, but when January comes she'll be gone. Through my tears I see her walking hand in hand with someone else. I paid to play the game, so I can only blame myself. Should've listened to the warning that I was handed down, but I know the wind will speak again to whoever she's with now. Pain, said the wild wind, is all she'll leave behind, and in the end she'll be the lonely one. Beneath the summer sun she'll make you think her love is strong, but when January comes she'll be gone. When January comes she'll be gone. January comes